Comfortable and happy, gentlemen?
Over the moon.
Yay!
Hello.
Oh, this is going to be fun. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the last panel of the day. And we have two fantastic guests for you. We have a bonus guest that we did not know was going to be on said stage. Bonus guest! Yay! Would you like to introduce yourselves to the lovely audience?
Good afternoon. My name is Marc Silk. I'm a voice actor for things like Johnny Bravo and Scooby Dooby Doo, like it's really creepy, Scooby Pal, and for Fifi and the Flower Dots for Channel 5, and for Pingu for Newt Newt, and for Star Wars Episode 1. I worked with George Lucas on that, and there's a whole bunch of others, but that's kind of what I do day to day.
And I'm here visiting from the USA. My name is Berg, and you may not know my name, but you may have heard me in hundreds of films or TV shows, as I'm a multi-voice actor. My more popular voices came from Jim Henson's Muppet Babies, which ran 7 years in original shows and 9 years in syndication. I was the voice of Baby Fozzie Bear, the bear that tells the jokes. Waka, waka, waka. And also played Baby Scooter, who worked on the computers coming up with some of the jokes for Fozzie. And these were just characters that people saw me in the cartoons. After a while, I got another cartoon called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that really swept across the world. And it wasn't really my show to begin with. It was the character of Donatello, who basically was Barry Gordon. But I was able to sound a little bit like Barry to fill in for him when he was away at some meetings that they needed him to come back and do the show for. But he was busy. So Donatello was like this. And then they told me he was also the voice of Bebop, who was chasing the turtles. So I had to cover his voice as Bebop. And Bebop was more gruff like this. And I am very stupid, but I like to get the turtles eventually. Get turtles! So that was Bebop. Those are two of them from the Ninja Turtles. I'm also a multi-voice talent, as I mentioned. If you close your eyes and hear me do some of these voices that I do impressions of, you would think that people are here. So that's the art of doing what I do. Just throw a couple of celebrities out that you guys might know. First off, there's John Travolta. And you might have remembered him from Saturday Night Fever or as Vinnie Barbarino in Welcome Back, Kotter. And so I filled in for his voice on a movie called Chains of Gold once. And he was on the phone, and they thought I sounded just like him, so they used it. And that's one of the celebrities. I noticed a show out here that runs from America is Everybody Loves Raymond. So basically Ray Romano I could do, if they ever needed somebody to do his voice for something where he couldn't show up. Otherwise I could do my own actor's Ray, I don't know. So those are some of the talents I can show you today.
I believe you do a very mean De Niro.
Well, I did Robert De Niro's voice. That was another project I tried out for when they were replacing Robert De Niro's voice in the movie Heat that they wanted to show on network television, and they couldn't keep the dirty words that he was using. They weren't going to bring him back to erase and then redo the words, so they needed somebody to sound like him. Well, I tried out for it with 10 other people, and eventually it narrowed it down to me being the one chosen to replace his voice. So basically, Robert De Niro, when I was doing him, I said, this is Robert, and this is how we would talk. And he'd say, don't do that. That's really wrong to do, instead of don't the F do that. So, I was doing it like this because I was told afterwards I got the chosen because a lot of the people that were trying out for it, when you hear people who say they do impressions of different people, everybody was doing one of his other characters, like the taxi driver voice, and they were walking in just going, you're talking to me, and all that. Well, Robert De Niro didn't talk like that, and I heard his natural voice and gave it to them for that particular movie and those particular scenes. So doing what I do as a voice person and voice replicator is based on listening and having a good ear to pick up certain ways people talk and present themselves, and tied in with voice acting that's where the acting part comes in. You get the voice, you get the acting, you're a voice actor.
I got in to be the voice of Mel Gibson.
How does that sound?
Yeah, how does...
Do you know, I hate to admit this, I need to hear it back again. But I was working on Chicken Run, the movie.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So I was brought in right near the end where they needed cluckers. So they needed to fill it out with some cluckers, and they said, can you just send us some examples of you being a good clucker? And I thought, well, they're gonna get recordings of people basically just going cluck, because pretty much if you're half decent what you do, you should be able to do a good cluck.
Yeah.
But so I thought I'm gonna give them a good range of cluck. I was a clucker with variety, so I gave them like a regular walking down the street cluck, which is then a kind of slightly nervous anticipation cluck, and then you're about to get your head chopped off by Mr. Tweedy coming down the farmhouse. So you go, but within reason, kind of most people that do this should be able to do that.
Yeah.
So I thought, what can I do to help them remember me above what other people were sending in? So I sent in, I got hold of this instrumental of Frank Sinatra, New York, New York, by the original band members, and then in 5-part harmony, I recorded back at my studio of this recording of New York, New York being clucked by chickens. It was a anyway, I got it, and then. Nick Park, the guy behind Wallace and Gromit and Morph and those people, him and Peter Lord were there for the actual recording session, and anytime they wanted to bring me in, they'd say, "Can we bring in a Sinatra chicken, please?" and it worked.
Beautiful.
I'm not so sure.
Well, let's test this theory then. Could you give me a cluck of a chicken who's waiting for a bus that's 5 minutes late? Perfect. That was beautiful. Yes, that deserves a round of applause.
Understated bored chicken.
I really don't know where to move on from that one, but I'm going to try. I will open this, once again. I will open this up to the audience. One thing I always like asking actors was voice acting something that you always wanted to do, or did you become a thespian and then the voice acting followed from that?
Well, I know we've got similarities and there's differences as well. I started in radio as a producer, so I was the button guy. I was the engineer at a radio station, and I've got to be honest. When I did a media course at school, and one of the reasons I nearly didn't do that course was because I was quite reserved and shy back then. And I wanted to be behind the scenes. I wanted to be the button guy, not a performer. And so I nearly didn't do it because there was a performance element to it. But in the end, I kind of took the leap and I did this course. And part of it was doing a radio show, and it was everything. It was like being pushed into a pool and figuring out you can swim pretty good. Yeah. And from then on, I kind of nurtured that. The kind of talent, I suppose, or love of that. I've always loved animation, and my heroes have been people we've been talking like fanboys today, and Greg's worked with some of these people, but people like a guy called Don Messick, who was the original voice of Scooby Dooby Doo. and Don Messick and Doris Butler, who worked for Hanna-Barbera on classic characters like Huckleberry Hound and Yogi Bear. But my heroes are people like that, and then through radio, producing other people and making them sound good, bit by bit, you kind of try your hand at things, and I've always had a good musical lyric, and it turned out there was a lot of characters that I could do. When you start out, you tend to replicate your heroes. Yes. It's like if you play a musical instrument, when you start out, you're basically playing your favorite tunes by your favorite artist because you've got no other point of reference. But then bit by bit, you start writing your own songs. It's the same with characters. You start creating your own character voices, which if someone's creating a new show, that's exactly what they need. They don't want you to copy somebody else. But it might be based on some other sound or whatever. But yes, my background was in radio, and then with it, late 90s, I did my first cartoon working with the people that created Danger Mouse. So we're called Cosgrove Hall. Cosgrove. They did Danger Mouse and Chorlton and the Wheelies and Duckula and a bunch of them. So it was a treat for me because I grew up watching their basically Cosgrove Hall with the UK's Hanna-Barbera, really,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, they were.
And then, so from being a Danger Mouse fan, getting to work with them was a dream come true. And then now I work on the new Danger Mouse. So Alexander Armstrong's Danger Mouse,
Yes.
Stephen Fry's Colonel K, and then I do about 30 other characters in that.
Amazing. And Greg, was it the same for yourself? Did you start off as a radio producer?
Well, I had a very strange mind as I grew up. Something went through my mind at a very young age. Why do people talk the way they do, and then when they go to sleep and wake back up, they still talk that same way? Why don't they wake up with another voice? And something was within everybody's throats, their vocal cords and all that. Whether it was who they were raised by or their area that they were living in is why they talk the way they do. So I just had this ear to say, well, that person talks different than this person, but they all have vocal cords in the same throat, and they're just from different parts of the country and city and towns. And so I just kept digging deeper and deeper, saying, okay, why can't I talk like them then?
Yeah.
And I don't sound like that person, but can I try? So I would play around with my voice, and this is in my before I was 10. I would imitate friends and teachers that I had, and then after a while, people would look at me more with amazement, saying, "Well, that does sound like that person."
Yeah.
And as I kept growing older and older, then I eventually got word that you can get paid for doing that. And I said,
paid for doing it?
Yeah, where do I go? Where's the line at? And so I looked into it, saying, okay, and what will they pay for? And then it was all based on the talents that you had. So I said, okay, what kind of talent do I have? I had the ability to read copy, like commercials, and eventually took acting lessons. I started playing around with imitating people as well. There were a few TV shows out in those days in the 70s, 80s, and 90s of impressionists. And they were on TV every week, and people knew who they were. And I said, well, how do I get to be in that group of people that watch people doing that? So I took comedy workshops. I went to acting workshops, and would do some of the characters that I do, and eventually started getting paid for it. And then you do the whole acting thing about the auditions, and you try to compete with other people who also think they can do what you do. I mean, right now here, I think, are there anybody in this group that does an impression of somebody, some other well-known person, or just people say, "Oh, you sound like my sister," or even if they're not famous? Because I run into people quite a bit who say, "Oh, I do a good." Who's the latest? They do Christopher Walken a lot. A lot of people seem to do that, or they're doing an impression of somebody who does a good Christopher Walken. But my impressions were just off the wall kind of things, like I did the John Travolta, or I started to do Steve Martin. One time I called up on a radio show, and Steve Martin's The Jerk came out, and I called up and said, "I don't want to tell you to come and see my movie, but if I did, I'd be a real jerk if I did." And it kept going on with all these jerk jokes, but people started calling the radio station saying, "Was that really Steve Martin that called?" And then I started to think, well, hey, I'm hitting these voices pretty good, and it led me to finding where I can go and performing these voices.
And with doing those voices, usually with a comedic element, they're usually a bit over the top. They have to be sort of heightened for the comedic elements. Was there like a part of the life lesson for yourselves was how to tone the character down so the voice is all that you would hear?
It depends what the show is, because there'll be say I grew up watching Thunderbirds as a kid.
Yes.
So Thunderbirds is a show that's kind of based in the actual voice style is pretty much based in reality.
Yeah.
That's not kind of, if you were doing, "Hey, Thunderbirds, here we go," it wouldn't quite work as well.
Yeah.
But so the character voices are pretty much what you'd have in, say, a Bond movie. They're very natural. So for that works. And same with the new Thunderbirds Are Go.
Yeah.
They're very much based in reality. Whereas my loves came from, and fascination came from shows like that, but I was so heavily influenced by the classic Warner Brothers cartoons of the 40s and 50s that were repeated when I was on TV when I was at school, and things like the Hanna-Barbera classic shows, which Greg's been part of. But for me, people like the absolute governor of all this was Mel Blanc.
Yeah, oh yes.
And Mel Blanc was the guy that did virtually everything that was a male voice in a Warner Brothers cartoon back in the 40s and 50s, right through to when he died in the late 80s. And he was, Mel Blanc was the voice of, "You are despicable. This is the last time I work with someone with a speech impediment." And Mel Blanc was the voice of, "Say your prayers, you lop-eared varmint, or I'll blast you to smithereens." Mel Blanc was the voice of, "I tried to a pudding tan." "You bet you throw a pudding tan. That pudding tan of me." And he was the voice of the Detroit Foot. "Come on, Betty, let's go." He was the voice of Barney Rubble, and he was the voice of Stax and stuff. So all these things were so much larger than life. And they were, I loved that heightened reality and the energy and the action behind it. So I suppose my go-to ideas are often based around something a little larger than life. But I love the mix of it, and I day to day I'm working on stuff that's a mix of all kinds. There's a new show called Go Jetters on Seed BBs. Go Jetters, and it's I'm the voice of the evil ratbag Gridmaster Glitch. So it's still sort of like a refined English accent with a slight nuttiness behind it as well. So it's still a little bit of there's safety in his madness. But yeah, it's a good mix, and it kind of works.
And in agreement with Mark here, when you do voices, you might have that one voice that you do that can carry you like the voice of Garfield. That's the way Lorenzo Music actually talked, and he never did a character outside of that character whenever he was hired. I studied with Dawes Butler, who inspired me as well, and Dawes did a majority of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons that everybody grew up with or knows of. And once again, as Mark is saying, it was an observation. You watch somebody who's doing this, and then you either copy them as best you can, but then it'd be a copy, or you create something off of what they did. So with Dawes Butler's character, of course he's not Yogi Bear, and I'm the smartest bear you ever met. And I watched him as a kid doing all this through his cartoons to eventually where I studied with him and picked up how he did Huckleberry Hound. He was a little hound dog, just kind of liked to sit on the porch and watch everybody walk by, and so he's like this. And but his other characters, like you've got Hokey Wolf, who tells you, "Hello there, this is Hokey Wolf, and I've got my little partner here, Dingaling." Well, Hokey Wolf was actually supposedly based off of Phil Silvers. So with what Dawes was doing, he was taking another character that was already established and building onto that. Or you got Snagglepuss. Heavens to Murgatroyd. Let me get out of here even. So these are, again, going back to the early days of cartoons, and that's kind of where I got inspired. And again, it's all about this observation. You watch something, you hear something, and then you can add to it.
There was a really modest description of what a guy does in this field. Hank Azaria, who's a guy that does so many voices on The Simpsons. He's the voice of Apu and loads of characters. And he described what he does as bad impressions. So it's just basically, it's him doing an impression of somebody but badly, so it doesn't sound like it's meant to be them. That's quite a good way. It's a good way of starting it.
Yeah, you want to just go a little bit off sometimes, and that can turn into another character. So when people were asking me when I first started, how many characters can you do, or how many voices can you do, I listed a bunch of impressions, and then I said, but then if I made this impression with a slight Spanish accent or something, that's another voice. And if you do that with all 50 voices you might be able to do, then you've got 150 voices that you can now do.
The truth is, there's no limit, really.
There should be.
Yeah, because it's all acting. Every the way it's written, the characteristics, the beats, and also you're playing off other people too. There's if you're a good actor, you'll be able to bring whatever character to life. And also sometimes I mean with what Greg does and what I do, we've got a whole bunch of characters in us.
Yeah.
So we if you throw it at us between the two of us, we'll be able to give you that character.
We do a whole show.
Yeah, but we got that. But also you might have somebody that doesn't have that kind of range, but who's still terrific at what they do. I was doing a talk for an animation festival recently, and someone said to me, "How many voices do you need to be able to do to be a great animation, voice actor?" I said, "Well, how about one? If you might have one great voice, but if you can act, you'll get all these different characters within that voice." I mean, you look at Tom Hanks. Well, really, most of the time, he still kind of sounds like Tom Hanks. There might be a slight accent, but he's a brilliant actor, so you completely buy that character. It's the same with, look at James Earl Jones. It's the voice of Darth Vader. If you sound like that, I don't care. I don't want to hear you do a fluffy bunny voice, because you sound like Darth Vader all the time. And same with Morgan Freeman. There are all these people who that will also be great voice actors because they are good actors. So they might not have a whole, you might not have them playing high and low and different things that Greg and myself might do, but within the mix, it still really is wonderful.
So essentially, you would say that the best piece of advice for anybody wanting to get into voice acting is become a good actor, and that will follow on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it's all acting, isn't it? We've just been chatting like fanboys earlier on today about all these things that we love.
We all heard the same type of characters, and it made us keep moving forward. We're talking about people with one voice. You have Lorenzo Music, who was Garfield. Then, of course, you got Gilbert Gottfried, and every character he does sounds like this. Iago the Parrot, then he's on the PBS specials, and he's always talking like this, but that's his character and his personality. And that's all. And so...
And then we got Johnny Bravo, man, who essentially was kind of like doing Elvis. Oh, mama.
We are running a bit... Oh, boy, we've been talking for ages, and I've just not wanted just to stop, because you're just going through all my childhood memories, and I love you both for it. In fact, Donatello was my turtle when I was growing up.
Oh, well, yeah, he's always going to be that thinking turtle who's always trying to catch Shredder each week, come up with new ideas. And then, of course, Bebop. Donatello has gone through many changes over the years, and people have asked me here and other conventions, like what's the deal with it? But each one has been a different entity, from the movies to the rebooted versions of the Turtles.
Yeah.
So it's up to whoever's putting it together what they want. I mean, in the last 5 years, you had Rob Paulson, who
was Raphael in the original
Raphael,
series.
and then he came back and did Donatello. Whatever got him into that. He knew the Turtles as well, like the back of his hand. So he fit in for whoever was casting and had the image of what they wanted to do with that. So good for him, and he got the chance to do two of the Turtles. If you look at the movies, they had guys in their 20s doing...
They had Corey Feldman playing Donatello.
Yeah, Corey, yeah. And Adam Carl was Donatello in the second movie. And it's funny, I know 2 or 3 of the guys that were Donatello, so whenever we met on the street, I said, "Do you know I was Donatello too?" And some of them were surprised, and here we knew each other all this time and didn't know. But yeah.
I am going to open this up. We do have time for a couple of questions if anybody would like to ask anything. Or I think I've more or less covered every question, and we've gotten every character.
Somebody must know something they want to hear. Want to hear
nothing.
Anybody can do a voice of.
Yeah, that's actually really good. Is there anybody that feels they could do a really good impression? We've got Ghost Rider in the back, who believes. Now, would you like to reveal who your impression is first, or would you like us to guess? like to guess. So.
Oh.
1, 2. Now, I have a machine gun. Her.
Barbara Streisand.
I was going to say Michael Caine doing an impression
I
of
was gonna
Alan
say-
Rickman.
Yeah, I was thinking Michael Caine at first. Alan Rickman, there you go.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
you know the villain.
Congratulations.
It is Hans Gruber.
That's good.
But it's
Yeah.
but it's essentially Michael Caine's audition to play Hans Gruber. I have a machine gun. Ha ha ha. That was terrible. I felt like yours was much better than mine. Anybody else? No?
How about, let's see, if, I don't know half the cartoons that you guys in the UK here have seen, so otherwise I would have played, like, Guess the Voice, you know. That kind of thing. I'll throw one out because I don't know whether you've seen it. It was a cartoon based from Deke Enterprises, which was a Canadian company, but it ran in the States. This guy talked like this. Basically, he was trying to find somebody every week.
Ooh. I was going to let you finish the impression,
Oh,
but
that's fine.
Was
That's
that
fine.
Inspector Gadget?
Perfect. You got it.
Yay!
Oh, good. I'm glad I did it right. Yes, my name is Inspector Gadget, otherwise known as Maxwell Smart, Secret Agent 86, Don Adams.
I love that impression.
Thanks. I'm the most
You should
feared,
go professional.
the most feared secret agent in Bettenthorpe. Would you believe my 2 bums on a bus in Burbank?
You'll leave my bums out of this.
And on that note, we are going to have to call this because we've got to get set up for the cosplay competition. But everybody, please, got to get a huge round of applause for Greg and Mark.
Thank you. Thanks for loving
gentlemen.
cartoons.
Oh, one last thing.
Oh,
if,
yes.
if anyone would like a signature of, like, from Greg or myself, we've got some very cool prints of the characters just at the back there. So come by and say hello.
Collectors too. I've got scripts from the Ninja Turtles show and Muppet Baby show.
I will show you my bottle of water.
Will you? How much you want?
You've got scripts with you?
I brought scripts actually because what I did, I found out of all these conventions, people may be collectors and they collected any kind of picture they did of the Ninja Turtles or cards and items from the show. Well, only a couple of us, I understand, because there was about 7 of us in the cast, kept our scripts from the show. So I made copies, but I autographed them. And for people who want to watch the show and read along with them to go, oh, he's going to say this next. Or if they have a workshop of some sort or always wanted to see what a cartoon script looks like, and they can buy the script and have it for their workshops to say, let's play like we're the Turtles or whatever.
Perform it in your house.
Actual, what you'll be reading is actually what happened for the shows.
And if it's signed by Donatello, what more could you ask
And
for?
Bebop.
Exactly.
But that's brilliant. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Like they said, they're in the bag, so if anybody would like an autograph, you want, yes, a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you, gents. Like I said, we are going to set up for the cosplay competition. Now, if anybody has signed up for the cosplay competition, if you can make your way to